Judy walked to the kitchen window again and glanced out to the front yard, hoping to see Todd's headlights cutting through the darkness as he made his way up the winding gravel driveway toward their farmhouse. She swallowed a sip of cold coffee and shoved past a wave of disappointment, wondering why he was late this time. With a sigh, she opened the oven door, worried the food was getting dried out 3 hours after she and Andy had eaten. The chicken and stuffing still looked okay, she decided, with some relief, and it definitely smelled good. "Mama?" A small voice called from the living room. It was Andy, her 3-year-old son, who'd been sleeping on the living room couch for the better part of an hour. She knew she should have put him to bed long ago, but she kept hoping Todd would get home, that he'd want to tuck his son in this time. "1 second, baby," she said, walking over to the sink. She filled a pot halfway with water before taking it over to the stove. The click-click-click sound of the burner preceded a blue flame that quickly set to warming the bottom of the pot. "Mama," Andy called again. She walked across the kitchen and peeked into the living room. "What is it, Andy?" He sat up, yawned, and rubbed his little blue eyes with his fists. He looked around the room, clearly half asleep and confused. "Where are you, Mama?" Judy laughed and came around the couch to kneel next to him. "I'm right here, silly." He smiled in relief and held out his arms for a hug, which she gladly gave. Judy held him tight, feeling his little ribs while breathing in the smell of baby shampoo that still lingered in his thick brown hair. "You gonna make the eggs, Mama?" he asked, "so we can paint them?" "I just put the water on," she said, running her hand across the side of his face. She had almost forgotten about boiling the eggs for Sunday's Easter egg hunt at church, which was only 2 days away. "They will be done tonight, and then we will dye them tomorrow." "Good," Andy said, smiling and clapping. His teeth looked like little white stones, and the gap between his 2 front ones made her want to give him another hug, which she did. "You go back to sleep, and when you wake up, you'll be upstairs in your big boy bed." "Okay," Andy said, his eyes widening. "Where did Uncle Whip go? Did he go home already?" Judy laughed again. Rip sounded like whip. She walked over to the window and looked out past the garage toward the barn. Yellow light spilled out the barn door toward the lake, and she could see her brother's broad shoulders as he leaned under the hood of the old Corvette he just bought. Actually, it's not that old. And though she suspected, Judy knew she didn't want to ask him where he got the money to buy it. Some things were best left alone. "Uncle Rip is still here, baby," she said, shifting her eyes from the barn to Lake Erie. It looked like black glass, and a streak of moonlight shimmered toward her. "Good night, Mama," Andy said, lying back down. "I love you." There weren't 3 sweeter words in the world. Judy made her way back to the couch, kissed Andy on the cheek, and then pressed her finger against his belly button, causing him to giggle. She kissed him again and then tucked the blanket tightly under his legs and feet. "I love you too, Andy." He yawned and exhaled before giving her a smile that let her know he was counting on her to keep him safe. She stood and looked back outside. Rip was now leaning against the barn door, smoking what she hoped was a regular cigarette. He pitched it to the ground, shuffled his feet over it, then walked back into the barn and closed the hood on the Corvette. He said he'd be gone by the time Todd got home. Judy wished he'd meant it. Did he suspect her secret? She shook her head. She'd been doing a good job hiding the bruises. He couldn't know. Could he? But then why was he hanging out, as if waiting? If Todd was late, it was likely that he was in one of his moods. And if he was, the last person in the world Judy wanted around was her overprotective little brother, all 6'3" of him. If Rip saw Todd in the act, she knew it wouldn't be good for Andy. And it certainly wouldn't be good for Todd. A narrow beam of light arced across the garage. Todd was home, and Judy quickly prayed that he would come far enough up the driveway to see Rip inside of the barn. He didn't. Please, Lord, not tonight.